Founders Edition comparison. It is a lot shorter than a Founders Edition. All right, out of the box, we're just gonna do, we just plugged it in, drivers are loaded. So base out of the box, 24.5, about 120 watts, just to see if it can handle the 1000. And then we'll step it down and we'll try a couple different variations. I'm just not gonna do upper and lower bounds on this. We will go through some, we'll try to find the sweet spot for it in the stability standpoint and the power standpoint. And then we'll start to peel it kind of back. I wanna get a whole range of numbers on this 1660. So anybody that's been really watching this already kind of knows the base speeds on this, 29. At 29.5, 130, let's call it 138 full system. I'm gonna take it down to 70, and then I'll do 61 because 61's been kind of the sweet spot for a lot of the nVidia GPUs that I use. So 29.1 mega hash on Claymore with these settings, and we just dropped it down to 105 watts. Now the system uses about 35 watts, so I'm gonna take it down to where I like to run these cards at 61%. Now a lot of people are like, man, why don't you just do 60? Because 60 actually, they're on a few cards, especially the 1070s. The difference between 60 and 61 is pretty significant. It's 60 actually down throttles the card too much, and it actually drops off like a ledge when it comes to the performance. 61, which is just one tick up, was right at the bleeding edge to where it would still keep optimal performance over 30 mega hash on like Ethereum. But if you dropped it to 60, it actually dropped it to like 26. So it was that's why 61, for anybody that's like thinks I'm just trolling them, it's not. So look at this. So we're at 29.2 mega hash. We were actually 0.1 more. He is in town. It's 29, and now we're at 90. We only shaved off a couple watts, about 3 watts, taking it all the way down, but we're still over 29. It's actually beating a GTX 1070. To give you an idea, the reason why I wanted to do the Founders Edition 1070 yesterday rather, I wanted to be able to cross compare the 1660 Ti with the testing. So the Founders Edition yesterday, if you guys didn't get to check that out, its peak speed was 13.03. All right, so this is a 55 megahertz overclock. Whoa, that definitely the extra core clock. 14.51. That's at the same power. We're at full TDP on this card right now, so increasing the clock is not pulling more power. And maybe that's part of the problem with why this card is very sensitive on the overclocks here, is that it just doesn't have the juice to get to it. Let's try 65, but it is super receptive to additional clock, because we saw almost an entire mega hash increase. And I know that doesn't seem like a lot, like, oh, well, big, who cares, an entire mega hash. Let's think about that slowly. That's an entire 1 million hashes in 1 second faster. So it is actually, it's quantitatively doing more by an entire million on the increase of that core clock. I know the numbers are easy to kind of forget of like what's going on. It's just a number on a screen, but what's physically happening on the card itself, when there's a difference, a bump between 1 or 2 mega hash, it's a pretty significant increase in what's actually going on when you're thinking of a throughput of output. Why we see an increase from 13.5 to 14.5 by just bringing the clock speed up 55 megahertz, but then when we go to 65 and we see a 10, we see no increase. It's somewhere on the card where we're at its throughput limit. Right? So even though we're giving it more, it's bottlenecking somewhere. So it's at its bottleneck point there, no matter. So you're going to hit a hard limit on a card. You've probably heard me say that a few times on a few of these different GPUs that we're doing, where we see like a nice increase, and then I increase it more, and you're like, wow, I can do it. But then it either slows down because we gave it more, and you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, what happened is it literally is like cars down a highway, and there's been an accident. Because now I'm trying to force too much through one of those gates that it's going through when it goes through the algorithm switches and its mixed states and all that, all the different switching that it goes through when it goes through on like prog power. You could do this with any algorithm, and you'll get an optimal amount of hash power, but you may overextend it to where one of those processes kind of bottleneck, and then you'll end up having a slowdown. You'll see that as a reciprocation of the slowdown of mega hash. So that's why you'll see it step down maybe a mega hash or two when you kind of go overextended on something. It's not that It's just balled up somewhere on the card now at that point. So you need to step it back down, give it the right cycle, because it is traffic flow just like any other cars on a highway. And it literally is the lanes of a highway. How much can it go through those different mixed states, the memory purging, the reading of memory, all that kind of things happen. And all the clock cycle is the speed limit, right? So if you overextend it, you can go over it. So hopefully those explanations, we're going to let that run for a second. Hopefully those explanations help. What I try to do is I read through the stuff that you guys send me. A lot of people send me emails, and I try to get through them. I try to respond to people. Some people have actually got responses from me on the email. But what I try to do is if I see a pattern and people asking the same questions, most of that content, I mean, because I get people that ask me like, hey, how can you talk for so long on some of these episodes or these videos? And it's like, bro, I'm reading emails throughout a day, and I'm getting a lot of questions to me. And I'm like, oh, shit, that's a good question. I should probably answer that if I can. Oh, crap, I got it again. Oh, crap, I got it again. So then it allows me to kind of formulate what I'm going to be talking during this kind of air gap time, like when we're waiting for a card to do something. So I can explain it to you guys of like, okay, here's how I would have responded to that. Well, it's because of what I just explained to you just a second ago when it came down to if you overclock a card too much and then it starts to slow down, what's going on. So, I mean, there's a technical way to explain that, but I'm trying to give it to you in a most broad standpoint and an analogy that makes sense, you know, like cars on a highway type of thing. So like the super nerdy folks are going to like get around like, well, you know, that's not the way that maybe that makes sense for, you know, the transportation of certain bits in this particular way, but the other thing's like a staging environment and it's not has anything to do with cars. I get it. Sometimes the analogy isn't going to be blanketed. Having a basic understanding of what's going on if you're just a general miner and you're just like trying to get the most out of your card and the most out of your investment and you're like, yeah, cool story, bro. I just want to make sure I can get the most out of it. It's still good to kind of know why certain things are happening with your cards. Let's take this down. We're going to take this down to a couple things. We're going to take it to an 80. We just shaved off about 30 watts, almost 30 watts. Let's see if it can get back up to near where it was at. It probably will not because ProgPow is it's a very linear algorithm to where if I pull something from it, it's going to reciprocate in less hash. I mean, it's just the way it is with this algorithm. You want to dial and give it all the power in the world, it's going to stay up there and give you all the best hash in the world. If you dial it back some, it's going to give you less. Where unlike Ethereum is more of like, there's no reason to run the card at so much at a power level because you can pull it back and not have a hit impact on your hash rate. On ProgPow, you are going to have an impact on your hash rate if you take away something from it. And that's the entire point of the algorithm, is that there's not a zero-sum game when it comes to power adjustments and stuff. Like what you put in is what you're going to get out. It's just the question now is what's the most efficient output for what hash you can get out of it. Like, which is pretty much the same with any algorithm, but it's even more so with it's a lot more linear with ProgPow. So now we're at almost 13, 12.9, 115. Just going to take it down to 58. There's no 0.61 on this because we're not hitting, it's not falling off a bridge when I pull it all the way down. It's just running. So now this is 58% power limit. We're actually seeing an observed lower wattage and power draw at the 58 power limit than Ethereum using Etash right now on this card. We're at 89 watts. That is something I didn't think we would see. I like finding surprises. ProgPow uses more power. Oh, no it doesn't. Not on a GTX 1060 Ti, it does not. At the same power limit. Now let's just set up some basic settings for the other algos. It's pretty optimized. Let's keep it, we're gonna do a 61% power limit. Or let's leave it at a cool, yeah, 55. 750 on the memory. There's some BitTube. And we're at 733 hashes for 50 watts to Feathercoin. Let's try that. It's 24. This is NeoScript. I like testing NeoScript with it. It's just a different algorithm. Almost a mega hash. That's our problem there. I bet you if I brought the power up to about 80, it would be over a mega hash. 17. Now Ravencoin needs to run for a bit. Let's see what the range is on this. So again, Raven, we'll put a range on there. 17, 19, but it really needs to run for a while. Vertcoin 38, 40 mega hash on BTC. Let's try some Aeon. All right, we're at 93 watts. We're at 12.7, 92. the folks that were doing ICOs and stuff of like, where's the stuff at? Like, you could kind of tell pretty quickly, like the teams that were putting together a process and a roadmap and then having regular updates and stuff. So my mindset when I look at those kind of things, especially a lot of these coin projects, is, you know, who's doing it? What's their background? Do they have anywhere I can check their background out? You know, just like if I was interviewing a series of developers that were going to work on one of my projects, you know, what are they going to do? What is their vision? What are they trying to? So when you usually have anything that you're building, like if you're building a product or a service or anything, you have like customers in mind, who's going to use it, what's it going to do, what are you trying to solve? Is it already solved? Is there competition in that? And while there's a ton of innovative approaches to, you know, this space of what blockchain and the crypto networks could do, there's not a lot of, it's a lot of engineers in a room trying to build stuff and nowhere really for it to fit, right? So when I see projects, Ravencoin, when I was talking through Ubik, when I was looking, I went to ETH's DevCon, when I see some of the development that's happening there. Some of that stuff is trying to fit specific requirements that are out there. Certain things that don't work as well as they should. We know people that are in the industry know that they don't work, no matter what people say. You know, like the way certain database architecture works and the security of some of the stuff, and then the whole island and moat kind of concept where you have data centers and nobody can get into them, but then who's watching the data center, right? Those kind of things. When you start looking at how that things start to connect, that's where blockchain tech in general and cryptocurrency that's in the incentive to uphold a network start to function, where they can cross-connect and replacing certain pieces and aspects of that industry. So that's why I'm super involved and interested in that concept, is seeing that I can see the applicable use cases